Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 140. It is the 19th of October in the year of our Lord 2022. 2022. 19th of October. The time is flying. It's Wednesday, and Wednesday on the Mindful Live is Tobago night, the lovely sister Isle of Trinidad. We are the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I am in my new my new temporary studio. As some of you who are in the live every night would know, baby, my firstborn jumped out a bit early and surprised us. And the studio, the new and improved studio, wasn't quite finished yet, so we are in the in between our old and our new. But because of that, I don't have my maps up, so you're not seeing yo Sandy. Well, yes, I know who you are very well now. How things, bro? That's my pie guy. Doubles and pie, but really and truly the pie is primarily what I buy. My pie guy that I buy my pie from. Good night, Tony the Ambassador. So if you all see, is it the yellow van on St. Mary's? The pies are A-OK. Now, as I'm speaking on this topic, let me digress for a little bit to address something that I've always had a problem with. As a pie guy is in the chat, a doubles and pie guy, maybe he could answer this for me. There are some doubles and pies that have a kind of crabbish taste to it. I don't know if any of you ever experienced that. Like some pies, some doubles, the chana have some kind of flavoring in it, a kind of crab-like flavoring that I do not like for anything. I've tasted this so many different places, and when I ask people about it, like, they don't have that taste but in their mouth, but I have it. And once your doubles or pies have that kind of slight crab flavoring, no thank you. No thank you. I don't know what it is. Chana don't belong in pies, yeah, as we on the topic. Fire for that, sir. Sir, I understand your opinion. I respect your ability to have an opinion. But sir, you are wrong. Proper chana at the right consistency goes very well in pies. You have your aloo pie and everything slight, still perfect. I disagree with that. That chana slander on the pies, I will not have you. I will not have you. All right, we're talking Tobago issues tonight, as I said. We're talking over on our sister island. What's he going to say, sir? When I go to him and I ask for a pie, everything's slight. You think he's going to look at me? You think he's going to look at me and tell me no? Chana do belong in pies? The customer is right. He's going to say, for everything slight, for the gentleman, please, for Mr. Mindful. You think he's going to say, no, check me tomorrow, bro, I'll handle you. Word up. I am home tomorrow. I think I'll take a pass. I'll take you up on that pass early in the morning for everything slight. All right. I'm getting distracted by the pies. Listen, let me go back down on this distraction route. The reason for that, you have to understand where we come from in Trinidad and Tobago. I remember the days, school days, on that school morning. Back then, we could have gotten dollar pies. And you go and you buy $3 pies with an apple J. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Like, I understand people who talk about the red solo and all of that good stuff. Yes, red solo is fine. But you see an apple G, and oh, it's on the house tomorrow. Word, I will be there. You see an apple G. I don't know what they put in that apple G. Not the can. The can has a different taste in it. If you bring a can apple J, I'll drink it nonetheless, to be very honest. But the can is not the same as the bottle. And I think they do a bit of mental games and mind games with you on this bottle apple G. They purposefully give you less than you would want. They know when a big man drink this little apple G, he would always want more. It's a trick. It's a mental game. It's like Apple J could give some relationship advice out there. They could give some pickup advice, because it's like it's like relationship games you're playing, you know, they're playing a bit hard to get. It's like, as a man, you go out with this lady, don't overdo it. You go out, you spend time, and then you drop her back home before she get fed up of you, so she would miss you a bit. And Apple J is doing that to us. You think Apple J don't know people want a bigger bottle? You think? I don't believe that. You think, who makes Apple J? Solo Apple J. You think Solo does not know that people out there want at least 500 ml of this Apple J goodness? And they keep giving. How much is in the Apple J bottle? 25 ml. It's like they take a syringe and fill the bottle with it. Jeez, man, jeez. Just anyway, even if you buy two, it won't taste as good as one. You know, Shaquille, 100% right. People talk about, you know, the bottle's small, but you could buy two, you could buy three, and that's true. But two Apple J's still don't taste as good as one. On the topic of, I know this isn't Tobago yet, folks. I understand, but we'll get to Tobago just now. Lots to talk about Tobago, but food is on my mind right now. Just as similarly, with that one Apple J not cutting it, similarly to me, is the idea that KFC asked for from someone else tastes better than when you buy it yourself. Y'all ever notice that? If someone else buys KFC and you ask them, let me get a piece now, and they give you that piece, that borrowed, shared piece of chicken has a different taste than if you walk in and buy your own. I've noticed this a long time. I've noticed this, and I think it's biblical. I don't know which is the verse. Let me see if I could find that on a quick. I can't remember which is the exact verse. But even the good book has a verse in Proverbs. Stolen waters are sweet. Now, I think they were talking about hoarding, to be very honest. They were talking about cheating and those cheaters, and they're talking about that being, there's a sweeter experience in that, in a certain sense. But there's something about that borrowing from someone else when you share it. Proverbs 9:17 for you folks. Proverbs 9:17. Stolen waters are sweet. Now, I'm not advising anyone to go and steal waters on that ground. Okay? That is hoarding business, and people is dead for that. So behave yourself. I'm talking about KFC here. The KFC, a KFC borrowed, nothing tastes quite as good. Because you know it ain't yours. Yeah. Facts. Anyway, anyway, to get on to Tobago, away from food. You know, as we talking about food and Tobago, I believe there was a Blue Food Festival recently in Tobago. You know, they had their Blue Food Festival recently. And lots of people were impressed by the amount of things you could make from dasheen and all that good stuff. But the food isn't the biggest issue over in Tobago right now, it seems. The biggest issue in Tobago right now seems to be the projects. Tobago seems to be focusing on quite a lot of projects. And projects are a scary thing when you're talking about governance and government. The reason projects are a scary thing is because projects involve contracts. I always remember that would have been 2015, I believe, election. The PNM brought someone who was I think a former UNC something. And he was on their campaign trail and he was talking about that and talking about how the People's Partnership loved contracts because contracts is exactly where you could get the kickbacks. Contracts are a sketchy game, you know. Contracts are a sketchy game because as a contractor, I could tell you basically, nearly any number, and it's up to you to choose which contractor you want to do the job. And nearly every contract, when you're bidding for nearly every contract, it's understood and said as part of the rules in the contract that the people aren't beholden to give the contract to the lowest bidder. So the person who gave the lowest price is not the person they automatically have to give it to. So it's quite possible I could say a random number and I just make quite a few thousand or $1,000,000 extra. As some of you know, my dad is a contractor. I am in construction a bit, and that was something I've always found so interesting. Like when I've gotten to the age where I start to do some contracts by myself, and you do a bit of estimate by yourself. And I'm talking to my father there, and we're talking contracts, and I'm like, so wait, this person could want to build a wall, and the exact material and exact labor cost could come up to, let's say, 20,000. And I could say 22,000 and make $2,000 extra, make a 10% interest, make a 10% profit. Or I could say 24,000 and make 20% profit. Or I could come up and say 30,000 and make 10,000 extra and just pocket that. And in some contracts, that's just how it goes. It's up to you to some extent what you say. To some extent. Chris 868 says, if they pull it off and the people of Tobago benefit from it, then they can have some governance. But if they don't pull it off, then they are doomed to fail. And that's the problem. If they will pull it off and how they will pull it off. Who is financing these Tobago projects? Y'all are asking the right questions. The Mind folks inside of the Mindful chat, they understand. It seems like y'all understand how this thing goes. Y'all are asking the right questions from the jump. From the jump, y'all are asking the right questions. All right, let's see if we could find out some of those answers to those right questions. THA, slope coastal protection a priority for Tobago. Several infrastructural projects have been identified and planned for Tobago for fiscal 2023, including slope protection, drainage works, and development plans for Scarborough and other areas. Confirmation from the THA's Secretary for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Trevor James, during the Assembly's Monday mandate meeting. According to James, at least 47 areas throughout the island have been identified for slope protection as a result of the damage from heavy rainfall. Now, and did they pay off the 1 billion that they said the PNM left there? Well, I don't know. We'll get into the financing. Don't worry, we're going to touch with the financing. How is all of this going to be paid for? We are going to get there. But 47 areas identified for slope protection. There are various ways of doing slope protection, but one of the chief ways are retaining walls. Listen, I don't know how many of you are in the know about that. A proper retaining wall is an extremely expensive project. To have 47 retaining walls or structures as such around the island is going to cost a pretty penny. Just by the way, he said the division had also met recently with a consultant team and several studies are underway to determine whether plans can move ahead for Scarborough's redevelopment. Now, as I've said before, whenever I see things like this, I see money. I see money being spent. They have also met recently with a consultant team. And several studies are underway. I am willing to wager that the consultant team isn't consulting for free. I'd be interested in knowing who the consultant team entails. Who is on this consultant team? How much are they being paid? Because sometimes you could get lost by a big number. They call, okay, at the end we're going to pay 1 billion in projects, and you're like, okay, wow, that's a lot of money. Not understanding that they already spent 5 million in research for these projects. They already spent 5 million on their consultants and people who come in before to just do some research to see if it is feasible. For example, in the work from home I've been watching recently, this is like the third time now in Trinidad they're allotting a piece of money to look into the work from home policies. They've done it before. They allotted money last year, they allotted money later last year, they allotted money earlier this year, and now in this budget they're allotting money again to do some more consulting on how we are going to run this whole work from home business. So anytime I see that consultation, I already thinking money is starting to be spent already. James said All right, this would consist, of transforming the port into a full cruise ship complex, complete with proper road infrastructure, a transportation hub, and a multi-story car park. There is also a point when you're considering in Tobago and considering these projects. What is the limitation on someone's vision of grandeur when their income is limited? We spoke about this before. Tobago's income is around $200 million as a country. If you're, as an island, they're part of the country of Trinidad and Tobago, but as an island, their income is around $200 million. If you're making $200 million, is it 200 or 400 million? One out of those two numbers. If you're making that, is it sensible for an island with an income of 200 million to be looking at massive grand projects as such? Like, I understand. Even if I am on an island, even if I'm a Tobagonian, and I know my island is only making 200 million, in terms of what I would wish for, even in terms of what I would wish for, what I would want, I would, as Mr. Duke foresaw in Roxborough, I would want what Mr. Duke was talking about in Roxborough with an offshore artificial island built and a aero something lab and all the fan. I would hope for it all. But you have to temper that with reality. If you know your income isn't at that level, to just hope for that much is kind of vain hope. It's not realistic. And Tobago is in a unique position where they are paired with their twin island, Trinidad, and because of that, they have access to more resources, more funds than their income says. Grant, I actually don't mind that. But still, given that the fact is you are only making so much, what's the limitation on the grand projects that Tobago should or could do? Chief Secretary, people are asking how these projects will be funded. Well, the Chief Secretary has information on that apparently. Chief Secretary, private sector to get contracts, THA will pay later. Chief Secretary Fali Augustine has said the Tobago House of Assembly will be relying on public-private partnerships to continue developing the island. Good night, opinion box. At the THA's mandate Monday briefing, Augustine said the administration is constrained by the limited resources from the national budget. Nonetheless, he said THA will look at creative ways to fulfill its mandate. The Assembly received $2.5 billion for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, 4.3% of the total budget. Augustine said the THA will utilize the design, build, finance, procurement model. Design, build, finance means we are asking the contractors to come with their own private money up front, do the work, and the THA takes its time to pay them back. Not a case where you come with your money up front and demand your money 2 months after completion. No, the THA takes a long while, as agreed per contract. We appreciate given the monies we have, we cannot complete all the infrastructural works on time. Augustine said tackling coastal erosion is one of the main priorities, including near the Scarborough Secondary School and in Lambo. However, he pointed out that a recent estimate by the Caribbean Development Bank projected that work to cost almost $1 billion. Where are we getting that money from? Therefore, to fund public projects, we will be calling on the private sector to front the investment and be paid over a long period of time. That will mean, like with any good hire purchase, the THA will eventually pay more. But we are left with no choice. If all we have for development financial for the island is $300 million at best. Tony the Ambassador says that sounds like it's sure to be a lot more expensive than the usual way of funding projects. Well, he admits that. He says that. That will mean, like with any good hire purchase, the THA will eventually pay more. That's the Chief Secretary's words himself. So he admits they will be paying more. But not only will they be paying more, they will be paying more to only the biggest contractors. I am not that big of a contractor. I could tell you, I don't have the kind of resources to go over Tobago, do a project, and wait an undetermined amount of time for the money. Anyone who is a medium to small contractor, that's going to mash you up. That's going to destroy you. That project has to be a box drain 20 feet long if you're a medium to small contractor. But for the large contractors, for the massive contractors, for the Samis, the Siri Rams, the Kusals, etc., 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 for them, that's okay. That's fine. That disappears in their yearly budget. That's nothing. And they know over time, this is like them lending money. This is like them lending out money. They know over time the money is going to come back with interest, and if the THA doesn't pay, they will sue them in time and make back the money. A consultant firm recently sued the THA, but it was a lawsuit in combination with the THA and the Ministry of Education, and they won several $1 million for projects done, I think, since 2008. So a massive enough company knows this is fine. This is fine for me. I don't mind. So what the THA is actually announcing there is small and medium contractors need not apply. Don't even bother. Don't even bother. And if I were to make a guess, I would guess that the vast majority of large contractors are located in Trinidad. I would guess that Tobago might have a couple large contractors, but not that many. So you are excluding a large number of local Tobagonian contractors just by saying this. Now, the reason he is saying this, the reason it has to be this way according to him, is the projects they want to do, they don't have the money to do it. But doesn't that tell you something? Government is a strange thing, you know. Government is such a strange thing. If your home, oh, Chuninja, man in Bago, these are the kind of men that need to be here for the Wednesday. Think of this, if you have a home, you're living in your home, you want to do an extension, you want to put a studio to the back, you want to build a little studio or something like that. The studio is coming up to $25,000. You check your account is $2,000 only. You don't do the project because you don't have the money to do the project. How can the THA say, well, we want to do projects that we don't have money for, and that's a bad thing? Listen, there would always be projects outside of your budget. I don't understand the economics in this. There would always exist projects outside of your budget. They could build a space program. They could say Tobago wants to be the first island in the Caribbean that has a space program, and grand. You could want that, but it's outside of your budget. To say that we should have a space program, it doesn't make sense. You just don't have the budget for that. That's just what reality entails. What happens when or if the regime changes? Because that is what's happening now. Well, that would be interesting. That would be very interesting. He said the coastal protection projects will include economic stimulators such as boardwalks to allow residents to earn income. So, $1 billion in refurbishing for the coast, and the project that will be the economic stimulator to bring back in money for the island is a boardwalk. Do you think, let me phrase this right. How long do you think it would take for a boardwalk to make back $1 billion? How long do you think that takes for a boardwalk to make back $1 billion? He said the public does not want excuses. When their house washing away, when their village washing away, and the place flooding, and I am coming to tell them, this is all the money we have, we can't do anything else. As far as they're concerned, there's a THA, we have to find a way to get the work done. I disagree. I disagree. There is, governance is not a business. That's true, sir. That's true. But it still has to be run with business acumen and business sense. If you don't run government with business sense, what eventually happens is you run government into the red. You run it into debt. And nearly every country does that to some extent. And eventually what happens when you push that further on, you end up in a foreign borrowing agency, trying to get some money to keep your country running. And when you go to that foreign IMF, they're going to tell you, well, the way you do that is austerity measures. You have to drop this, you have to drop that, you have to cut this, you have to cut that. And then the people in the country are all up in arms. Oh my goodness, what is happening? How can they do this? Well, you were spending more money than you had for the last couple of years. So now you're going to have to pay back that money for the next couple of years. China more than willing to lend. You're right, Experience Life. You are right. They are willing to lend. But their lend comes with a sting in the tail. And China loves to lend money that they know you cannot pay back. China is in Africa, the Belt and Road Project. They're in Africa lending up a storm. They're lending money to African countries to build docks, to build ports, to build airports. Because they know part of the contract is if and when you cannot repay this massive infrastructural project that is a key cog in your country's economic wheel becomes wholly owned by China. It's neocolonialism. That's what it is. Neocolonialism. It's not the new Silk Road. I wouldn't put it like that. The new Silk Road is trade. The new Silk Road is trade. Right before the pandemic hit, it already had that new Silk Road kind of vibe where the trade out from China was booming. Listen, you could have bought anything on Alibaba, bring it over to Trinidad. Well, probably not Trinidad because the PNM government was fighting us down with that bringing good stuff. But Alibaba business was booming, probably booming too much. The Chinese government made, what's the owner of Alibaba guy named Johnny something or something to that effect? They made him disappear, but nonetheless, that was booming. But this is neocolonialism. They're lending you money knowing that you aren't going to pay it back. So, Jack Ma, right. Thank you very much, True Ninja. They know you aren't going to pay back and they are going to own your infrastructural projects. They're fine with that. So, is that the future you want? Borrowing money from people who want to take over your business? Oh, he's on holidays. Okay, understood. But that's what happens. So the chief secretary is saying here that the people don't want to hear that we don't have enough money for it. But if it's the reality, it is the reality. Now, I could give points to the PNM government for that, according to what they say. They say we don't have the money to continue with these things, so they are willing to take unpopular decisions to save some money. The thing is, if they aren't speaking the truth, that's a whole other matter, and they will face the consequences for that. But in politics, it is impossible to give everyone what they want. That attitude, it's the same attitude that Duke had, the political leader of the PDP. And I heard the deputy political leader of the PDP espouse something similar too. That, well, if we have someone over in New York and they need help, we have to help them. Good night, Wendy Lee. We have to help them. What are we going to do? Well, there is reality. Reality doesn't work like that. There are people, there are people living in the hospital and want a house. And maybe they cannot get a house because they cannot afford a house. And everyone cannot be given a house. There are more people houseless than want a house. You cannot just make a house and give them. Someone has to be paid for making the house. There is reality constrains these things. Reality constrains these things. And to speak like this speaks as if you speak as if you don't understand reality. The people don't want to hear that the THA doesn't have enough money. Well, if the THA doesn't have enough money, it is the reality. If your child, if you are a parent, your child is going to school, their classmate buys one of the new iPhone, the new iPhones that cost the price of a round trip to Dubai. And their classmate buys one of that. And they come home and tell you, Mommy, Daddy, I want an iPhone 14. And you're like, well, we don't have, and I don't care that you don't have enough money. I have to get what you're going to go buy someone and borrow the money to buy that. You're going to take out an iPhone 14 and hire purchase to give it to it. No. If you just don't have the resources, you just don't have the resources. But the chief secretary went on. He explained, we are not allowed to take loans just so, but we are allowed to approach contractors using this mechanism, which means we could stretch the payments out and pay as we have money. I don't know what that says, Chris. I'm not sure what that says. Now, what he's basically saying here is that the THA is going to use a loophole method to try to still take out loans to some effect. They're going to take out loans from contractors. That's their aim. As a contractor, if you're a big enough contractor to do this and not bust, the deal you're going to sign is going to be heavily in your favor. Now, let's evaluate this. If I'm a big enough contractor to do work and wait for an undetermined amount of time to be paid, if I'm big enough to do that, right? That means I don't need this job very likely. You can't pressure me. You can't pressure me to take this job. I don't need it. I'm not struggling. I'm big enough to do it and wait for the money. I'm obviously not struggling for money. So I am not going to be thirsty for this job. You are going to be thirsty to get someone to do this job. So who do you think the contract is going to be more biased towards? And that would be fair. Like, I wouldn't even be upset with a large contractor if, all right, the project was going to be 5 million. That was going to be the project. On this hire purchase thing you're trying to tell me, I'm going to charge you 30 million. I can't even be angry with the contractor because they're taking a risk. You have to pay them for the risk. That's what you're doing. And in the long run, tell me if you see this. In the long run, if you're looking at the amount of money the THA has over the course of 20 years, let's see, if they do this hire purchase contract business, would they get more contracts done for the same amount of money or less? Thank you very much, Opinion Box. Just by the way, for those of you streaming this live over on TikTok or Instagram, I also stream live on YouTube. The name of my YouTube channel is Nathan Springer. The Mindful Live is the name of the video, name of the live, but the name of my channel is Nathan Springer over there on YouTube. You can feel free to head over and subscribe. One of the benefits is you get to actually read the articles as I read them. You get to see over the videos if you missed it. It's Mindful Live 140. There are 139 others out there, so you get to see those over on that channel. Feel free to head over there and subscribe. But yes, if you're looking at a 20-year span, and as I said, the project that might have cost 5 million, let's say it's going to cost 15 million on this hire purchase project plan. Over the course of 20 years, having projects cost 3 times as much, aren't they going to get less projects done in the long run? Isn't that actually going to decrease the amount of projects you could get done? I am not sure I am following the perfect logic of the chief secretary here. I understand why he would want to do that. You'd want to look like you're doing something to the Tobagonians that put you in that position. I understand that, but I'm not totally sure I understand the logic of this here. He made it clear that the arrangements must be done properly and not in an ad hoc, hand-selected way we saw last year in the lead-up to the TH election. Augustine has been critical of the previous PNM administration's handling of road paving and other contracts. He claims some select contractors were given multi-million-dollar contracts without the proper channels being followed. Now, that's curious that the chief secretary would claim that, because the same way he is claiming that, well, he was claiming that the prime minister right now, PM, THA discriminating against Tobago contractors. Massimo over on Instagram says, well, I suppose that would depend on the economic value provided by the project upon completion. Well, we already spoke about that. I know you came in a little later than before, but one of the main projects they're talking about is the rehabilitation of a coastline that they already forecasted may cost up to $1 billion. And the chief secretary said that they're going to do measures, they're going to put measures in place. Let me get the exact quote the way he put it. They're going to put measures in place there to, get back some money. What was the measure he said? I'm trying to get the exact quote as he put it there. Right. He said the coastal protection projects will include economic stimulators. Now, if you're including an example of an economic stimulator, I would presume you'd include your most promising example. And Massimo, as I said, I know you weren't here when we read that, I think. Their stimulator for their economy is, drumroll, such as boardwalks. Boardwalks. That's going to recoup that $1 billion, a boardwalk. That boardwalk is going to make so much money. It would make our heads spin. Yes, the boardwalk is the key. Right. Prime Minister, THA discriminating against Tobago contractors. The Prime Minister has accused the Tobago House of Assembly of discriminating against Tobago contracts for projects on the island. Speaking at his constituency at the Diego Martin Center, Rowley said there was preferential treatment for Trinidad contractors over their Tobago counterparts. Rowley was urging his supporters to be wary of the decision they make at the polls in any election. And he was using that example of, look what happened over in Tobago. Look what happened in Tobago. 14 seats. And people say Tobago has found its seat finally. And 14 days later, confusion reigns. Tobago got $300 million from the Minister of Finance for a development program. They gave every cent of it to contractors in Trinidad. The money came into Tobago, THA writes the checks to the contractors, and that money is coming back to Trinidad because they don't like the Tobago contractors, because they are PNM. That's what Dr. Rowley is saying. You hear them talking about Warner. You know why they're calling Warner name? It's because they are in business in Tobago. Would you believe that? Now, that Warner name, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. That Warner name had some bacchanal in it because Dr. Rowley bought some property from him not that recently, and there were allegations that there was impropriety there, but Dr. Rowley, he actually did file that in with the Integrity Commission, so there wasn't that impropriety there. Now, Augustine responded. He responded to that allegation. Augustine slams PM, denies favoring Trini contractors. Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Augustine, has dismissed claims from the Prime Minister that Tobago-based contractors are being discriminated against in favor of their Trinidadian counterparts. He also accused Dr. Rowley of trying to mislead the public and spewing covert racist rhetoric. Now, that's an interesting plug to put in there for Farley Augustine of the PDP party, whose colors are the Pan-African colors, whose leader speaks about the party being a party for the black man, to be accusing Dr. Rowley of spewing covert racist rhetoric. I suppose what he's accusing Dr. Rowley of here is painting the Trinidadian contractors with a dog whistle of being East Indian and painting the Tobago contractors with the dog whistle of being Afro. And maybe he's saying that Dr. Rowley is saying something covertly racist by saying they are favoring the Trinidadian contractors over the Tobago contractors. I don't know about that, but that's an interesting thing for him to see. Last year, the PDP defeated the PNM. Look what, right, that's what Dr. Rowley is saying. They're re-saying what Dr. Rowley said. Responding to Newsday's questions via WhatsApp on Thursday, Augustine rubbished Rowley's claims and said there were several inaccuracies in the assertions made. This THA never got $300 million for projects from the central government. The allocation was never $300 million in the first place. The allocation was $264 million. Listen. If I was Mr. Farley Augustine, I would not have made that my first point. It wasn't 300 million. It was 267. 267 fairly round off. That fairly rounds off to 300. Like, it is a bit of an exaggeration if you're thinking about it like that. But 300 million is rounding it off to the nearest 100 million. Like, for that to be a first point to try and, bring it back your way, that seems... That's your first point. Secondly, when we got into office in December 2021, Rowley's party had already spent significant sums on election projects. I think if you're stating that, it would be a much more poignant point for you to say how much was spent. I mean, it is a difference. Yes, 33 million is a difference, but rounding off. These are, like, if Dr. Rowley is accusing you of giving Trinidadian contractors the money. This is your defense. So you're defending here. We have to remember what he's defending. He is defending an accusation that you gave all the money to Trinidadian contractors. In your defense, yes, it can, Chris. I understand that. But I mean, in rounding it off, it isn't a big thing to point out. But your defense to being accused of giving Trinidadian contractors all the money is, one, he didn't state the exact correct figure, and he exaggerated it by rounding it upwards. Two, the PNM spent out a lot of that money, but I'm not going to say exactly how much they spent out. None of these are good defenses against being accused of giving Trinidadian contractors all the money. None of it is a defense of that. None of it is yet a defense of that, if we're being honest. Additionally, the 3 projects that are being bandied about have not even been paid for by the THA up front. The select companies had to demonstrate the capacity to mobilize and finance those projects on their own and receive payments much later down the road. Augustine further argued that final payment from the THA are due 18 months after completion. None of these defenses are defenses against the accusation of giving Trinidadians the contract. You did not defend that accusation. I don't know if the Newsday left out the piece of his statement where he actually rebutted that accusation, but none of these are rebuttals to that accusation. Sir, I heard you spent all of the money that you were given on Trinidadian contractors. I heard you spent all of the 300 million you were given on Trinidadian contractors. And your defense is, that's not true. It wasn't 300 million. Some of it was already spent. We haven't paid the contractors yet. Are all the contractors Trinidadian? That is really the question, isn't it? That's the main question. The first answer, if you are going to rebut a point saying that you have hired all Trinidadian contractors and you're saying no, that is untrue, your first point will be no, we did not hire all Trinidadian contractors because look, George is from Tobago. That's how you rebut something like that. That's a rebuttal to something like that. You are not being accused of necessarily misspending the money. You aren't necessarily being accused of corruption even. You're being accused of giving Trinidadians the money. And the reason that is a plausible avenue to attack you on is because that was the same direction the PDP attacked the PNM on. The PDP was accusing the PNM right last year of using all the money on Trinidadians. They weren't focusing on Tobago enough. The PDP was a Tobago-centric party. We are Tobagonians for Tobago. We have our own thing. We are about Tobago, not sending any money to Trinidad, etc., 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 which is the mandate you were elected on. You were elected on that mandate. So it is a fair accusation to point out that, okay, you are spending all the money on Tobago, on Trinidadian contractors. Funny enough, I saw Trinidadian contractors paving in front of a school today. Jerome DJ Venom says, and he's a Tobagonian. Listen, up until now, I think that the accusation is right. Because Mr. Augustine has not denied the accusation. Nothing he said here is a denial of that accusation. He's just saying, he's obfuscating from what the accusation is. We didn't get that much money. PNM spent plenty money. We are doing projects. You're hearing her, Nisi. You're hearing her. We're doing projects. We're doing projects that we're going to pay afterwards. Yes, true, fine, good, yes. But none of those are points to do with who is getting the contract, whether it be a Tobagonian or a Trinidadian. And even beside who is getting the project, these projects over in Tobago are running into some more problems because the EMA says THA projects starting without environmental clearance. The Environmental Management Authority has expressed concern that several infrastructural works are being undertaken by the THA without the requisite certificates of environmental clearance. But can the Tobago contractors handle the deal put out there by the THA? Well, that's what I said at the beginning. At the beginning, Chris, that's what I said. The format of the contracts that the THA has selected, the format of their contracts, already excludes probably the majority of Tobagonian contractors. That's what Dr. Rowley was talking about. So, if he is the biggest contractor in Tobago and he is excluded for his political affiliation, are there any contractors in Tobago big enough to do like jobs? And if you are selecting a style of contract that excludes them, remember, your party was elected there to put Tobago first. They should break it up to small, so smaller contractors could participate. Well, I am not even saying whether they should or should not do that. I am not even saying that. But based on what they said their party was about, we are about Tobago and Tobago issues and pushing Tobago forward. Okay, well, maybe you get some people who are skilled in such things, skilled enough to split up the contract small enough to be useful to others. Maybe. Split them up into bite-sized pieces. Because the style of contracts you are using right now, they're excluding. They're obviously exclusionary. EMA Managing Director Hayden Romano told Newsday on Tuesday, told Newsday on Tuesday that projects at Rockley Bay and the road development are two areas of concern. During the THA's Monday mandate, THA Secretary of Infrastructure Trevor James outlined several projects. In a media release on Tuesday, the EMA reminded the public that the CEC process is a mandatory requirement by law to assess the potential impacts of proposed activities on human health and the environment. This assessment allows for the implementation of mitigation measures to minimize negative impacts. But then you lose the hire purchase model if you split it up. Exactly. They have to do it as massive projects if they want to make it tempting to big contractors. They're in a bit of a pickle. I understand that. To do these size of projects that they want to do, they have to split it. They have to do it like that, because they just would not have the lump sum to be able to pay for one massive contract. So they have to do it on hire purchase. If they have to do it on hire purchase, it has to be a large enough contract that is tempting for a big contractor. If I'm going to wait 18 months, 2 years going up there for my money, don't tell me I'm doing that for $1 million. That doesn't make sense. It has to be a big enough project that it makes sense to me as a big contractor. So obviously, they're looking to pool everything into the contract into a massive thing. Now, the sad irony in some of this is it may be that when these contracts are given to the big contractors, these massive, large contracts that they have to do the whole thing for, some parts of it, they may still split up, the big contractors, split it up and give it to smaller local Tobagonian contractors. It's a high likelihood. If one of the Trinidadian massive contractors gets a contract over in Tobago and they need regular masons, they very likely aren't going to bring masons from Trinidad. They may hire some smaller or medium contractor in Tobago to supply those skilled workmen for them. So the Tobagonians are still going to get a little sprinkle up while the Trinidadians get the profit share of it. To solve this issue, there needs to be buy-in from central government and a proper Tobago development plan. Now, that's difficult when the two parties that rule Tobago and Trinidad aren't the same thing. When it was PNM in both Trinidad and Tobago, something like that could have been more feasible. It could have been a possibility, but it's much more difficult. Now, Jerome says it's odd EMA would say anything now because under their watch a PNM control THA ripped up mangrove. Well, well, where did they rip up those mangrove? And maybe they did the CEC. Maybe they did. I don't know. You'd have to check the history of that project, but I don't know. But you know how politics goes. It's not really necessarily surprising that the EMA would come out with this now. And whether they turn a blind eye to the PNM or not, well, you understand that's politics. Or for the airport expansion, well, that's not surprising. And I think they did a CEC for that. To me, I thought they was solvent and none in void. You understand how that goes. But even if they didn't call out the PNM, the fact that the PDP is now in power there, they should know that they may have to cross their T's and dot their I's a little more than a PNM government may have had to. Because, for obvious reason, you aren't in governance in both of the islands. Jumping over to Tobago Carnival, though, something very interesting I saw. An article on Tobago Carnival. Tobago chooses Grenada over Trinidad for its carnival. And just something she said in this. Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation Tasha Burris has defended the THA's decision to seek out help from Grenada and not Trinidad for hosting its first carnival. Burris spoke today at the THA's Monday mandate, saying there are those in this space who felt that Tobago should have gone to Trinidad first, but the reality is, before we were joined to Trinidad, we were joined to Grenada. What does she mean by that? Boris added that they are now re-establishing the relationships that once existed. What is that? What are you trying to say? Before we were joined to Trinidad, we were joined to Grenada, and we are trying to re-establish the relationships that once existed. That sounds kind of backstabby. As a Trinidadian, personally, I am kind of offended. I do not like the sound of that. I really don't like the sound of that. Imagine, imagine you have a wife. You have a wife or a girlfriend, and she's going to her ex and telling you that before she was with you, she was with him. And she's trying to reestablish the relationships that once existed. What are you talking about? Hello, Scafty. What's going on? How things? What exactly do you mean by that? What are we as Trinidadians to understand by this? We were connected to Grenada first. Okay. And like, and yes, she pulled a Jada Pinkett. And listen, as a Trini, I real good, bro. As a Trini, I am not on that Will Smith vibe. Sorry. I would not like Trini to be the Will Smith in that scenario. What do you mean you're connected to Grenada first? Like, that is so insulting and insane. It's so insulting and insane. Such an unwise thing to say also. Such an unwise thing to say. What is the relevance of that? What exactly is the relevance of saying something like that? When we looked, she went on, when we looked at what may look similar to what we are trying to achieve, it was not necessarily the Trinidad model, she added. She said that when they looked at size and scope, Grenada was the closest neighbor to what they felt they could achieve in the first year. But the thing is, they aren't even modeling it after Grenada. They're modeling it very much after Trinidad. Tobago band leaders upset. Mass just bath suits and beads. The leadership of the Tobago Carnival Band Leaders Association is upset over the plans for mass in the island's carnival, which takes place from October 28th to 30th. The association's interim chair, Gemma Bedlow, said as a veteran band leader, the carnival appears to be more about fetting than showcasing the artistry of mass practitioners. Tobago Carnival is about fetting. That is what it is all about. A peeved Bedlow told Newsday this was a rush. It was not sorted out properly. Is like a fet, because if you are telling us that you don't want a repeat of Trinidad Carnival in Tobago and to develop our own brand, it is not happening. It is a repeat of Trinidad Carnival with bath suits and beads and tongues and all them nonsense. This is not how I thought our carnival was to be. We should have had our own style of carnival here. So what is this secretary talking about? Okay, fine, because Trinbagonians love fete. Okay, fine, that's understandable. So then what is the secretary talking about? That they're looking at the Grenada model, and we were once linked to Grenada, and we're trying to re-establish. Listen. There was another person once who said this, who reminded everyone that Tobago was once linked to Grenada. A certain former government minister once in a racist rant spoke about Tobago going back to Grenada and leaving Trinidad. And he was speaking about that in terms of demographics. Everyone in the chat knows what I say when I say demographics. And he was hoping and suggesting that Tobago leave Trinidad's partnership and go back to Grenada. He was being a racist when he was saying that. It was a racist point he was making. So, when this secretary is saying something like this, what exactly is the point she is trying to make? I don't understand that point. In relevance of the counterpoint you are trying to counter, people are saying that Tobago should have sought out Trinidad's help first. We're sister isles. Trinidad is the country that sponsors most. Trinidadians are the ones that are going to go over to Tobago and support the carnival the most. It makes sense you go over to Trinidad and check first. No, we were once linked to Grenada. This topic making me feel to burn my... I wouldn't suggest you do that, Jerome. It would not help. It would not help. But it is confusing to me. I don't get it. When you can't excuse your actions, you make these types of statements. Well, I guess. And isn't this the same secretary that kind of botched that trip to Grenada in the first place? I would like to know, what did they learn in Grenada? When they went over to Grenada, what from Grenada they're bringing to the Tobago Carnival that they could not have found out anywhere else? I don't get this. And it's so disappointing when you look at these politicians, and nearly every new political party that comes in, they always promise that we're going to be different and we're going to be this and we're going to be that. And so often it's just more of the same, if not worse. So often. That is quite disappointing. All right, folks. Any further questions or comments? So at one point, Tobago was briefly under control of even Poland. Very true. I don't understand the point. I really don't get the point that was supposed to be made there. At those Monday mandate meetings, aren't there any journalists or anything like that to ask a question? But isn't there carnival sold out, fed sold out, flights? I wouldn't doubt that. As True Ninja says, he's right. Trini and Tobagonian love Fed. And you see the Gen X and lower, where they aren't the millennial generation. It's kind of funny to me that us millennials so often complain about our inability to start families, our inability to buy houses, and etc., that the boomers, the earlier generations, ruined it for us. And okay, I understand the argument. But our generation spends money on consumer goods like drug dealers. Thousands of dollars. They're going to fly around the world and see the sights. Millennials that don't own a house have pictures with the Eiffel Tower in their background, touring Europe. And I have no argument against that. Do you. Freedom is yours. But people have to understand there are opportunity costs. If you make one decision and you choose to spend in one direction, don't be surprised that you don't have enough to spend in the next direction. But interestingly enough, that's the point I was making. That I'm quite sure when you look at that Tobago Carnival, lots of the millennial generation and the Gen X generation, the younger folks, 40 and under, 45 and under, they're going to be flooding Tobago, spending tens of thousands of dollars on those fetes because they don't have families to spend it on. It's just a reality of the younger generations. They far longer time they spend without family. They're into professional lives. They're working for a decade so far. They have no real parrot on a stick that they have to spend their money on otherwise. So they will spend it on a fete. I have no doubt that it will be well patronized. Look at the island crashers and the Great Fete Weekend and etc. and etc. and etc. They love that stuff. Artistry will not generate the revenue Tobago looking for. Here's the thing though, True Ninja. I understand your point that Fete is what will bring the money for Tobago. I understand that point. Partially. Because really and truly, there's no shortage of fete carnival types, of carnival fete types. Miami, Labor Day in Florida, Nottingham, St. Lucia, Grenada, Jamaica, Barbados. Nearly all of those carnivals are kind of being hybridized into the same thing. Almost all of them look the same. I think Tobago had a unique opportunity to offer something different. I think they did. And that was the initial plan that at least they said, the PDP said they were going for. Something more cultural, something more local, something more distinct. Personally, you would have gotten someone like me to even go over there for something like that. I'm not going to go over Tobago for a fete. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And the problem with the fete model is once there's another fete, sorry, Notting Hill. You're right, Eastling, Nottingham. My apologies for calling your name wrongfully. Notting Hill, you're right. The problem with the fete style carnival is that there are so many other fetes. If another big fete is held in Trinidad on the 28th, Tobago Carnival suffers. Just like that, it suffers. If another fete is held in Jamaica during that time, they suffer. Because you are aiming for the same audience. The same audience that went to Trinidad Carnival, the same audience that went to the Miami Carnival, the same audience that went to Cropover, the same audience that went to Spice Mass, the same audience that went to St. Lucia, what do they call their thing again? Some kind of French Creole word. All of them, you're aiming at the same people. Now, hopefully they have enough money and it seems like they will spend their money still. But from the moment you have a clashing event there, they leave you because nothing is distinct about your event. You don't have a specialized crowd going for that. I think if they went for something more cultural and artsy, they stood a higher chance. They stood a higher chance of attracting a unique crowd that they could keep getting to come over regardless of who brought up something in their same slot. If Tobago had Tobago Carnival that was unique to Tobago's, for example, the Tobago Heritage Festival, etc., that's unique to Tobago. There's nowhere else in the world that you could go. Yo, 868, yeah, it's been a while. But I've been back for about 2-3 weeks, but I was out for about a month. There's nowhere else in the world you could go and see a Tobago Heritage Festival and Blue Food Festival. There are people year-round will set that as part of their calendar just to go for specifically that. Now, I don't think that if they were looking for the money, maybe you could have still had the fetes. The fetes could have been private. But if we're talking about on the public side and the government side, like, come on. And let's not act as if there isn't an appeal for artistry. Listen, I think the appeal for an artistic, unique, local, creolized Tobago festival would have been greater than the appeal for another Tobago fete. There are so many fetes. It's but another fete. Yes, fetters love to fete. But the moment there's another fete competing with your fete, that's going to lose your audience. There are limited amount of fetters in the world. Who do you think there are more in the world? Are there more people in the world that would want to see a soca fete? Or are there more people in the world that would want to see a unique Tobagonian festival? If I were to guess, I would think there are more people that would want to see something unique out of Tobago. The fetting audience is a limited audience. It's not everyone. It's a very limited audience. That's true, but it do generate as much as the fete, just my opinion. Burna Boy sell out. Yes, it would sell out. Yes, it would. I don't doubt that. And you could have possibly had Burna Boy still even in another kind of event because a Burna Boy is more of a concert than a fete. But I don't think it would generate more on a consistent basis. I don't think it would. And I think the upward limit of a cultural festival is much higher than the upward limit of another festival. A festival, you could only have so many fetes, and as I said, if there's competition, you lose out there. A cultural festival like that, the possibilities are open-ended. The possibilities are open-ended. There are 8 billion people in the world. Possibly every single person who hasn't been to Tobago may have an interest in seeing what a Tobagonian festival unique to Tobago might be about. But if it's just a fete, they could go Notting Hill, they could go Miami, they could go anywhere else and experience basically the same thing. The same artists, the same songs, the same artists, the same songs, the same environment, the same kind of stage, the same wine, the same clothes, the same beads, the same bikinis, the same models modeling the same bikinis. This first one, in my view, was never going to do anything else than bite the pie before February. Well, according to what the THA initially said, that's what they said was that wasn't their intention. Their original intention, according to what they said, was not to have a Trinidad Carnival Part 2. Because isn't there Tobago Carnival at the same time when Trinidad Carnival goes on? Isn't there Carnival in Tobago in February? So it's like Carnival Part 2. According to what they said, that wasn't their original intention. But maybe it's similar to the contract. Maybe it's similar to the contract business where initially they said that they were aiming at a Tobagonian kind of audience, but then in the end, it was just the Trini money that was too much to resist. The influence of Trinidadians coming over was too much to resist, so they gave it all over to the Trinidadians, and it's another pet festival. Who in the Tobago Carnival in the live here? Who is in the live that's going to be over there? I know True Ninja already there, so you ain't have to be there, you're already there. All right, folks, all right. That's all I have for now. If there are no more questions, I hope you all were educated, informed, or entertained. I live in Tobago. Of course, you are DJ Venom. You know, I have to make a trip to Tobago. A good bit of the live viewers are Tobagonians. I have to make a trip to Tobago. Sometime soon I will be there. Not for the carnival. You won't see me there for that. But sometime soon we will link up. We might do a live with some guests over in Tobago. And I'm letting you all know, once the studio is completed, the lives will be done with guests. Live guests. Stay tuned. I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow I will be live. Tomorrow at 9:15. Until then, guys, peace out, peace out, peace out. I will see you all then. Laters.